It's Friday, it's noon, and it's time for the Another View Roundtable. Our topic today, the African American middle class, defined by education, economic independence, home ownership, culture, and class. The black middle class is aspirational to some and held in contempt by others who claim those who reach the middle class have somehow lost their roots. We'll talk about the role and responsibility of the black middle class with Roger Chesley, Carol Pretlow, Bill Thomas, and Wil LaVeist. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. The Another View Roundtable is next, right after this news from NPR.
Discussing today's topics from an African American perspective, this is Another View.
And good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. It's time for the roundtable, but before we get into that discussion, I want to encourage the seniors and those who care and love seniors out there to attend the Medicare Health Fair and Expo. Now, this is being sponsored by Senior Services of Southeastern Virginia, and it is all about everything you need to know about Medicare. And I have the pleasure of serving as MC for this event. It is next Saturday, November the 16th from 8 until 3:30 at the Virginia Beach Convention Center. And you can register, or you can either register in person or you can register ahead of time at SSS, that's 3 S's, EVA.org, www.ssseva.org. Representative Scott Ridgell from the 2nd District, Virginia, will be there. Dr. Matthew Hines, who is the Director of Provider Outreach with the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Dr. William Hazel, Virginia's Secretary of Health and Human Resources. We've got a lot of really knowledgeable people about Medicare. So come on down and participate. They would love to see you. That's the Medicare Health Fair and Expo for Senior Services of Southeastern Virginia. And be sure to come up and say hello, because I'd love to meet you. So let me share with you an experience I had last Saturday. I was invited to attend the 10th anniversary of the Greater Williamsburg Women's Association, a celebration of 10 years of giving back to the community through the arts, education, and cultural and civic events. Now, this is a group of professional and retired middle-class African-American women, many of whom are come-heres, as they call people who are not from Williamsburg, and they give of their time, talents, and treasures to make Williamsburg a better place to live. The organization was founded by Marilyn Taylor, and the GWWA is yet another example of the positive things going on in the black community that is a benefit to everyone. And they are a perfect segue to our discussion today on the black middle class. So let's welcome Roger Chesley. He's a columnist for the Virginian-Pilot, and you can read his columns every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Hey, Roger.
Barbara, how are you?
I'm doing great. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Carol Pretlow, a political science professor at Norfolk State University. Hi, Carol.
Hi, Barbara.
So glad to have you. My favorite, our community activist, Mr. Bill Thomas. How you doing, Bill?
Oh, good afternoon. How are you?
Good.
Hopefully all is well.
All is well.
Praise God for all his blessings.
Absolutely. And journalist, talk show host, and author Wil LaVeist. Hey, Will.
I thought I was your favorite.
Well, you are too. But you got to set the tone for Bill.
Yeah, I love it.
So this conversation about the black middle class came out of various conversations we have had kind of off air about what it's like to be an African American and living in the middle class. And Roger, one of the things that we would always talk about is how it seems like all the discussions that's in the media and so forth focuses on the negative and on the lower socioeconomic strata in our community and so forth, and very little about the black middle class and the successes that they're facing.
And I think that you tend to, especially in the media, you tend to try to work on those things that need help or need the most attention. We tend to forget those things that are working well. And there's obviously a significant number of African Americans who are doing well, who don't get into the news, who run businesses, who are doing good things in terms of the community, who are at universities, such as Carol, and who do quite well for themselves. Yet they don't probably get enough attention, and in some ways, so much is asked of them because they're supposed to be the role models for those folks at the bottom. They're supposed to try to help pull up folks who might be behind them. And yet when they might leave the inner city or move to suburbs, they're often accused of turning their backs on
forgetting
people
their roots.
Right, forgetting their roots, when really a lot of the people who do that just want to live in a place that's safe like anybody else does. And I think it's a natural tension that happens. And as I think all of us here would consider ourselves in the black middle class, I think we've probably all been confronted with the issues of somehow trying to help people that have been left behind, but at the same time understanding that we might not always have the same experiences as some of the people that we might have left behind.
Well, but Roger says we're not in the news as much because there's not a problem. Yet wealth versus income is a very real problem in the black middle class. If you look at the numbers, I think we're about a third less than whites in terms of wealth, in terms of being able to pass along homes, inheritances, things of that nature.
In fact, that wealth is actually disappearing rapidly. I mean, I'm looking at a study from the Pew Charitable Trust back in 2012. It said 68% of African Americans rated in the middle class of the wealth ladder will not do as well as the previous generations. I'm seeing, the Urban League in 2012 came out with a report saying how the black wealth is disappearing. So there's absolutely, a reason for the black middle class to want to have information about what is going on and reason for it. But I think also some of the reasons that, Roger said the black middle class has been maligned, I think some of it is actually true. Because I think one of the things is that throughout our history, those who have been in business, those who have been sort of doing more financially well off than their other brethren, have always spoken out on behalf of the community. But there was always a cause that got people to speak about something. So if you go back as far as slavery, there was the black middle class of that time was speaking out against slavery. If you remember, you talk about journalism, Ida B. Wells was speaking out against lynching. But after the civil rights movement, this issue of a particular cause to speak on behalf of, I think you've got some major issues there. And, I don't want to cannibalize the discussion, but as I've talked about before on this show, this issue of the war on drugs and why the black community, and particularly the black middle class, hasn't been as strong about it is because it is very much a class issue, and it's very much those black folk have the drug problem. But what we're finding is, no, it's not just those black folk. If you've got it in your family, if you've experienced it, it is our problem, and it's a national problem, but we've been rather silent on it.
Well, let's, before we go any further in the discussion, let's talk about the history of the black middle class. And Lisa Godley put together a piece for us on that.
Even before the Civil War, while thousands of enslaved Africans worked on the plantations and farms of white families, there was a black middle class. These were free blacks, usually very fair-skinned. They were able to vote, run for office, and buy property. They built their own businesses, churches, and schools. But segregation and Jim Crow laws disenfranchised the middle class, stripping them of their legal and civil rights. While black middle-class men were now excluded from the political process, black middle-class women entered the political realm as diplomats, lobbying for reform and the right to vote for black men.
We shall overcome.
During the 1960s, with the end of segregation, things started to change. The civil rights movement demanded it. More blacks sought higher education and worked white-collar jobs. This enabled blacks to move into white middle-class neighborhoods or develop their own black middle-class communities. Today, middle-class blacks have similar lives to middle-class whites. They live in the same neighborhoods, and their children play together, attend the same high schools, and often the same colleges. But that's where the similarities cease. When we look at wealth, the median wealth for middle-class African Americans is less than 1/3 of the wealth for their white counterparts. This often translates into an inability to endure economic hits, secure their retirement, or boost their children's economic future by giving them the down payment on their first home.
So, Bill, we reach middle class status. We're able to move into neighborhoods. We're able to do better for our kids and so forth. Does that mean that we in that group live in this post-racial society that everybody talked about once the president became president?
We live in the same society we lived in 1860. We just don't want to realize it. I mean, it's nothing that's changed. I mean, there were black middle class folks then, there were black middle class folks then. But the thing that did change is that we lost confidence in ourselves. We didn't leave our communities. We abandoned them for trying to be integrated. And the problem we had with integration was not the fact that we were trying to be better than they were or something like that. We were just trying to be like white people. We always were brought up to be better, work twice as hard, do it twice as good, do everything. Mm-hmm. Once we accepted the miscalculation that we could be white, and that's just the reality. We lost it all because we became less competitive. We've always had land ownership. We've always done that. In fact, we probably, if you look at the statistics, which we're looking at now, in an economic review of ownership and jobs transferred out of the black community, you'll see we always owned it. It was just taken away from us. We were disenfranchised. Right now, when the first blacks graduated from class after the 1860s and the 1900s, 87% of our black folks went to work for a government, either state, federal, or local. Mm-hmm. We didn't create economic environments and opportunities like we used to. Your children cannot inherit...
As opposed to opening our own stores.
Your children cannot inherit your job. And now that's becoming a real back factor with sequestration, and the government is squeezing down those opportunities. And those middle-class families in D.C. and in Maryland and in Northern Virginia, which has one of the wealthiest African-American families in the whole country. Yeah, all of those up there.
County, Maryland.
They're getting stripped. They're getting thin. And then the last thing I'll leave it, we abandoned education. We used to love education. We used to love it, and we've just lost it. And that's going to be our biggest detriment.
Bill, I want to ask you a question from a personal perspective, because you did a grand experiment back in the 90s, and I remember that when you purposely moved into Park Place, which was a very different Park Place than it is today. And I'm curious as to why. Was that your desire to give back, as people talk about, or what made you do that? Actually,
way back in the 1990s, I was offered a position at Fox News as a commentator. And my mother and my family, sisters and brothers, were all upset about it. And they said, you need to... Well, no, actually, I thought it should have been a good thing, and I would have made a lot of money, but I didn't do it. I didn't go to New York. I stayed here. And my mom said, walk to walk, talk to talk. So we moved into an all African-American community. Mm-hmm. And the two things that I saw there that were depressing, and this hasn't changed, it's the same thing. Men not working. I've never in my life saw men not working in my whole life. Men worked in our families and did things. And then I saw a non-appreciation of education. Park Place is no different than any inner city in Detroit or Cleveland or anything. It's academic ignorance. Just let me make this quick point. People are arguing about CTAC, and CTAC wanted to take on this, what's this program called? Achievable Dream.
Achievable Dream.
Right. And then what I did, I went and looked, why are these people arguing about this? You want a better education for your kids. Then I went back, and Roger, I'm going to send you this article. They issued a resolution, the Congress, through Bobby Scott, to CTAC, which is one of the oldest, most respected communities in America. And they were entrepreneurs, artisans, and teachers, and lawyers. And what the people were saying, we don't need white people coming in here telling us how we should raise our children. And that's what they were saying. But at the same time, if you look at that, and then that's all good, but the other side you look at the statistics, and I'll send those to you as well, from SAT scores from Achievable Dreams. These scores are 390 and 380. And then they'll take a diamond, like black folks don't have diamonds, that'll go to Naval Academy or go to Harvard. We can't produce kids like that. And then they'll get one or two of those kids, and they'll promote them like they created it. And that's just not true. when 99% of the kids are getting 380s and 390s on their SAT scores, even at this day. And then the diamonds, I'm not saying that's all that bad, but now I appreciate the argument of the senior citizens of CTAC, because they were saying, this is what we used to do. We don't need help.
In other words, we can take care of our own.
Go
ahead, Roger.
I will say this. If you saw the other stories that we did this week and within the past week just on the achievable dream, and now it is indeed going to come to CTAC, a lot of the parents of the would-be students said, hey, bring that program here because we want what this program offers. We think this is a good thing for our children. And the graduation rates, as well as the promise of help for college tuition, is a big factor in wanting
wait a
the
minute,
program
hold on
there.
a second, Bilko, because I want to bring Carol. I want to bring Carol into the conversation. But does it matter whether it is African Americans bringing the school there or white people bringing the school there? Or is it more important that the educational opportunity is there? Because that's the argument also that happens with HBCUs. It's a similar argument.
I would love to think that it just mattered that the educational opportunity was there. But I do believe that when you look at the African American community and African American educators, there's something that we add to the blend. I understand, for example, I have some students recently who did some essays, and I was explaining paragraphing. I was like, why didn't you get this in elementary school? And then I saw that they told me this, well, SOLs, we know what it is, what a paragraph is, but we don't know how to form it. And I said, back in the day, a teacher would say, okay, here's how you do this. We add something to the blend. We know that it's not intellectual, an intellectual problem, it's an exposure problem, and we can address that.
Barbara, I agree in part, but it's not just all black African American educators or just black, and that settles it. Carter G. Woodson addressed this many generations ago, Miseducation in the Negro, where he was talking about black educators getting education, and to Bill's point, basically being trained and being conditioned to act white. And so you put black children, so if you put black children in front of a black educator who has this mentality, you're going to come out with an even worse result. And we're seeing that happen across the board in so many of our schools, which comes back to the black middle class and how the black middle class in many ways has failed. It's come out of the civil rights movement. We arrived, and now we don't have to do these things that our tradition has told us that we do.
Let me read this to you. This is in the 1950s, a Howard University sociologist, E. Franklin Fraser, Roger's alma mater.
Absolutely.
In his groundbreaking 1957 book, Black Bourgeoisie, Fraser observed, quote, "The black bourgeoisie is without cultural roots in either the Negro world, in which it refuses to identify, or with the white world, which refuses to permit the black bourgeoisie to share its life." Agree with that?
Amen. But let me just follow up. I agree with that. And actually, we went through a lot of his work when I was in colleges and things like that. But let me just follow up on Roger with what we're saying about achievable dreams. I'm not adverse with that. I'm not saying that. But the root of the problem is, in order to wipe out an epidemic, you must first resolve the source. The source is the parents. The parents must teach their children to be respectful, to have values, to have morals. Nobody else can superimpose that.
So what is the responsibility then of the black middle class to work with these parents to teach their children?
We have failed so badly, and actually I talk a lot about this to my boss a lot, and we really, really we got to do more. There's no reason why I shouldn't be adopting kids or somehow involved in a whole bunch of other kids' lives. I'm just our selfishness and our stretch for greed and want, and a lot of the things have taken us out of what we used to be. We used to be soldiers. We used to fight and raise that bloodstained banner, and we used to not let people fail. And for some reason, we have forgot those roots. And you know this, Carolyn. And we just have forgot it, and we won't do it.
I don't think that's totally true. I don't think that is true of the middle class. I think most of us understand where we have come from. We live with where we have come from every day, and then we have the responsibility, or take the responsibility, of bringing others up. But we can't save the whole world. And so we do a segment. Those professors at Norfolk State, at Hampton, at HBCUs are saying, okay, this is where they are. This is where we're going to bring. It's not that we've forgotten where we were. We know this.
Okay.
I would say there are individuals who have maintained that commitment, but collectively, as a group, no. What has happened, again, I mentioned the war on drugs as an example. The Congressional Black Caucus was founded in the 70s to be the watchdog for the black community.
Absolutely.
The war on drugs, the new Jim Crow, happened under the watch of the Congressional Black Caucus. How does that happen? Do you even in your mind, can you even imagine Frederick Douglass allowing that?
No.
Could you imagine any of these people who come from our legacy and what they were talking about? So to your question to Bill,
I agree with you.
The black middle class's role is to say, we have not arrived. We cannot just take our foot off of the gas pedal. We must re-engage. We must take our community forward, because look at what is happening under Obama. Look at what has happened to black wealth.
Roger, you want to respond to that?
Well, one of the things I would say is it seems
a handshake between you two. Wow.
Yeah, you know,
Bill
this is a rare
Thomas and
moment.
Wil LaVeist just shook hands. That is amazing.
I do think, of course, hindsight is 20/20. That a lot of people in the CBC back in the mid 70s thought, "Hey, this will help." They did not realize the devastation it would do to black families, how we would be so much disproportionately affected in the prison system.
Really?
I do believe that.
We had prohibition. We had prohibition as the model that showed you cannot legislate and tell people you cannot have liquor, and then at the same time go behind the door and go have liquor yourself.
But
this is exactly what they did.
It's affected black folks much worse than it has affected whites, and I don't know that was necessarily the same thing in prohibition. But what I'm saying is, we know that now, and also you had black constituents saying, "Hey, some of our neighborhoods are getting jacked up because of these drug dealers and because of this drug problem."
Well, what about this whole idea then? Because when you reach the black middle class status and you're making these decisions, you've got to be able to reach across the aisle, like they're supposed to do in Congress. You've got to be able to interact with everyone. So why then is there this feeling that in order to interact with everyone else, we've got to forget about the rest of our own? Because
it's class. Because I now have reached a certain economic status. You know what? When I was limited in the community, I didn't really want to live next to that garbage man anyway.
But I did.
So now that I moved and I have the ability to move, now I have similar aspirations. And as the bourgeois, as he just said.
Yeah,
so it becomes that issue of class has always been here in America. You've got the white community understands that. There are poor whites who understand this dynamic between them and whites who are of means. You look at any ethnic group, they will tell you. There are people listening right now shaking their head. Yeah, I know about that. And that is what has happened in our community.
Okay, but are any other ethnic groups, and I'll just throw this out there for consideration, required as the African American middle class is required, and I put that word in quotes, to reach back and bring someone else up?
But they do.
See, I would not. Okay. I don't think that they have the same implied requirement that
responsibility.
They've got to help pull the people underneath them up.
I disagree.
Let me just tell you about one anecdote I had. A few years ago, when so many black teenagers were getting killed in Norfolk, I think it was a lot of the athletes, a city official told me off the record, he was white, until the black community deals with this, then it's going to keep on happening. And the thing I kept on thinking, well, isn't this not just the black community's problem? Because if somebody gets killed, they could be white too. Aren't we all? We're all humans, so isn't it affect us all? But no, it almost seems like, well, if it's a problem affecting mostly blacks, well then the black middle class and the black upper class is supposed to deal with that. I don't hear that for other ethnic groups. I don't hear that for brown folks, for white folks. I don't hear that same, well, Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton should be leading the charge on this particular issue. Shouldn't we all be leading the charge on this particular issue, regardless of race? But, that seems to be, I think, the implied thing that's supposed to, we're supposed to deal with that. We're supposed to do it.
Hold on. If you're just joining us, we're talking about the black middle class with Roger Chesley, columnist for the Virginian-Pilot, NSU political science professor Carol Pretlow, community activist Bill Thomas, and author, journalist, and talk show host Wil LaVeist. And Bill's about to pop over here. Go ahead.
It's really, truly, and I understand what Roger's saying, but it's so truly disappointing. Over the past 20 years, 365,000, as you calculated, African Americans have killed each other. 95% of those have been done by black folks. It's a black problem. It's something that we have to deal with, and we won't deal with it. 7,000 African Americans are still killed in America today. Even in Hampton, I think they've had 18 murders over there, from babies from 6 months to 1 year old. Nothing is said about it. There's no responsibility taken for. This is our responsibility. Lastly, we have to love our race as much as other people love our race and remain their races and remain Americans. And there's nothing wrong with that. But we don't do that. We will allow our lower classes, as Wil has said, because white class has issues the same thing, but Puerto Ricans and the Latinos and the Asians and the Chinese, they have a different culture. They will not allow that to persist. We have to deal with this. And so I'm going to go back to my little CTAC and the Achievable Dreams issue. Fine, that's a good program. But until our parents learn how to raise their children in their own homes, you don't need that. Kids need to go to school to be educated, not acculturated.
I'm not sure that we're disagreeing, but what I am saying is, yes, black folks have to be involved in these issues, but not just us involved in these issues. I mean, this is something that all Americans should be involved in.
Yeah, because I don't think that when we look at 21st century America, that yes, we are African American, yes, some of us are middle class, but that means yes, we have a responsibility, but so does America as a whole. So does the city and state as a whole. Because in the end, in the final analysis, all of us are affected.
Okay, so how do we get the black middle class re-engaged? How do we get everybody, Wil, to start doing whatever the ills are of our community to make a difference, to make that change?
Well, I think one of the things that we're seeing is that this evaporation of wealth is going to force some people to realize, no, I have not arrived, and I need to wake up, and we need to do something. We need to re-engage and move our families and move our people forward. The only thing that I would say that's different from what I've just heard here is that, again, as I've said on the show before, African Americans, like Native Americans, have a slightly unique, different experience in this country from other ethnic groups. So if you put any ethnic group under the same kind of pressures that we have been, these two groups, you're going to see similar results. So let's understand that first. Now, to what Roger was saying, if you look at other ethnic groups, you will see the same sense of responsibility of, you look at the white Irish community up in Boston, and you will see the same responsibility of, we have to help the people who are among us, our people, our folks. We have to move them along. Now, at the same time, if you also look in those communities, you will see where individuals have abused that. You will see where individuals who have sold out their own people. Bernie Madoff. Most of the people who lost under Bernie Madoff were from the Jewish community. So you have good and bad people in all of these things, but we must understand that our big issue that I've seen, that I've analyzed and looked at the history, coming out of the civil rights movement, we developed this mindset. We've arrived. We can take the foot off of the gas pedal. It's all good. And know what? And those other black people, those bad black people, the drugs and all that, hey, yeah, go in there and give them hell, because we don't want them over here. We didn't want to be with them anyway.
That's true. That's true.
And that was black politicians did that, black preachers did that, black business people did that. And to Roger's point, no, if you understood the history, you knew what was going to happen, because when they did prohibition with liquor, what did it do? It created Al Capone. It created the underground economy. It made celebrities out of those guys. You knew what was going to happen. Worse. Absolutely. And now it's been worse.
Okay, Carol, did you want to respond?
Yeah, I keep hearing us saying this thing about we have arrived. Where have we arrived?
Well, mentally, he's not saying we didn't. We didn't.
Exactly. And so
we never did. We thought we did. Mental condition.
If it's but that mental condition is a result of some contextual situations. We didn't arrive. We haven't arrived. And so how did we talk ourselves into thinking that we had arrived?
Some people didn't think we didn't arrive. We didn't because all our folks didn't arrive. And
exactly.
So we
didn't
never
arrive.
We never arrived.
But we behaved as if we did.
There are people.
And I think what happened was, again, the civil rights movement, there was a particular cause that people were galvanized against. All right? Then you all lived it.
Well,
we all lived it. You saw what happened after that.
I never thought I arrived.
Let me ask this question, because part of the black middle class experience is that word class, and the cultured way that people were taught and were raised. Some of the things that you talk about, Bill. I mean, our parents raised us to be respectful and to say yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am, and so forth.
You could not go out your house. Your parents told you, Barbara, you know that.
I know.
When you go out of this house, you represent me.
Exactly.
And if something comes back in this house, you got a problem.
So here's the question: as we move forward, and as hopefully the black middle class does not disappear, but what has the change of the hip hop generation done to that whole idea of the perceived way of class within the black middle class?
Well, for me, being of the hip hop generation,
because that is your generation.
What I feel was that was a total reaction to the abandonment that happened.
Thank you.
And that was a creative and intelligent response to what was left. And what you had people who were left were really not. Hip hop generation is ultimately, to me, shows the ultimate creativity of black people, and when you put people on their oppressive condition, that they can take from nothing. I don't have instruments, I'm gonna make music with my mouth. I don't have a stage to dance on, I'll put some cardboard on the sidewalk and dance and create dances, and then turn around and make economic opportunities for us out of this happen.
You could.
And so what happened? And then look at the response of the black middle class. Oh, they are not cultured. And we must stay away from them, and they are undermining our values instead of engaging them and moving forward.
And that's my question. So as this next generation comes up, what is going to be the black middle class? What will it look like, Roger?
I don't know, because first of all, we still have the pressures of even staying in it with the economic meltdown that took place starting in 2007. So are the numbers still there? And then secondly, some of the social ills that are affecting folks who would want to aspire to be in the black middle class. That's another stressor, so that there's a very decent possibility that we're an endangered species.
No, it's not. That's not a speculation.
Bill?
That is a fact.
You know what Tavis Smiley said? Believe it or not, Tavis Smiley said, if the current trends persist, soon barely 40% of African Americans will be considered middle class, and by 2042, the average black family will earn only 61 cents for every dollar earned by whites. The black middle class is disappearing.
What I think needs to happen is, in this war on drugs that is killing us and taking a lot of our best and brightest, the entrepreneurs, and driving them into the underground economy. Think about it. What is an entrepreneur? Risk taker, good at numbers, creative, innovative, work long hours. That's the war on drugs is driving a lot of our best and brightest into the underground economy. Re-engage in education, like Bill just said. We have black institutions, HBCUs. HBCUs need to find new relevance. They should be creating and re-engaging education at a lower level that would feed the pipeline to sending kids back to HBCUs, and we'll also be creating jobs.
Absolutely. And there are some signs of hope. There are some signs of hope. And one of the biggest signs of hope, I don't applaud him enough, and that's Congressman Bobby Scott.
Yes.
And I've known him for 25 years. and I've never known him to be a Democrat or whatever. I just known him to be a friend and somebody who was very supportive and somebody who took calculated looks at things to make things work. He has new legislation out called the Promise Act. And basically what he's saying is what Will is saying, which I totally 1,000% agree.
Several times.
What we need to deal with is America represents 5% of the world's population, but 25% of our population is in jail, and 80% of that is African American. That is unsustainable. We have to forget about this immigration. We have to go back and, if somebody murdered somebody or did something horrible with children or something, keep them in jail. Somebody took drugs, that's a medical condition. Somebody's taking cocaine like the mayor of Montreal or whatever. You know, that is a Toronto. That is a medical condition. So we need to forgive that. Get those people in the treatment centers, get them some places to clear themselves out so that we can re-engage our community by going back to our own grassroots. That's the only thing that's going to happen. The problem that I have with President Obama, the problem that I really deeply have, is that he hasn't engaged from the bully pulpit this issue. We can't have a stock market at 16,000, is the highest it's ever been, with all this wealth created from folks, taken from the folks who don't have anything, and getting all these huge salaries, these captains of industries, getting billions of dollars. That is just not right. It's not fair. It's not America. It's not anything. It's not liberty. But we have to get back to our basic roots. And our basic roots is, again, and some people may get angry with me for saying this, we got to stop letting white people take control of our children. We got to take them back ourselves. We got to teach them to be mannerable. We can't be afraid of them like you're saying, Will, in hip-hop. They will take it. That's what I did learn in Park Place. The worst kids that I found, if you put your hand on their shoulder and shrug them and say, kid, I love you. We're going to figure out a way for you to get out of this dilemma. Do you know what? I left Park Place because we had too many kids coming to our house. I'm serious. I'm serious. Because we just couldn't handle it anymore. And my wife couldn't handle it because she's ill. But anyhow, what I'm saying is that it wasn't because of the violence and all that stuff. We got through all of that. What I found out, I saw a vision where if you just took these kids and talked to them like human beings, understood their dilemma of not being formally educated because nobody wants to educate them formally or take things, but put them in jail so they can make money off of it, you will be happy. But I'm not a racial person. I have no issues with the Caucasian or white people or whatever you want to call them. But we have to take our communities back. We got to stop having white people coming in and telling us what we need to do. We got to take care of ourselves, pay our professionals the fees that we pay other people, like Norfolk State, give them the money, give them Achievable Dreams money, and see what they can do with it.
You know, he mentioned Bobby Scott, who I've had several conversations with and respect highly.
Absolutely.
Him, Elijah Cummings up in Maryland, Maxine Waters. There are members of the CBC who have been on this. I call on Charles Rangel from my city, New York, who was the frontline general in the war on drugs, to admit that he got it wrong and to support and to make a change, get behind his members and lead that entire CBC with President Obama and say, you know what, we need to engage this, end this thing, engage it, move forward.
And it's real simple. And it is real simple, and I'll let you go. It's real simple. Bobby Scott has great legislation. Let's not give the money to the prisons. Let's give it to this. Let's give it to these kids, and let's treat medical conditions as medical conditions, and then we will have a change. If we don't do that, we're lost.
Okay, let me, because I want to move us to talk about the election that just happened on Tuesday. And here's a quote from Pete DuPont. Now, this gentleman is a columnist for the Wall Street Journal and chairman of the National Center for Policy Analysis, which is a Dallas-based think tank. And here's his quote. There's a very big gulf between the black civil rights leadership in America and the black middle class in America. The black middle class are conservative. Many of those minorities can be persuaded to be members of the Republican Party.
He obviously wasn't looking at the numbers that came back from the elections on Tuesday.
Yeah, because I believe black folks put Terry McAuliffe in office, did they not?
Well, we're still voting overwhelmingly in the Democratic Party. You know, there might be some changes, but we still don't see a future for us necessarily in the Republican Party, by and large, as a group. There's still too much of a stigma that many Republican Party leaders do. Now, there are some individuals that seem to be making out well, but you know, it's not because black folks aren't voting in their own interest. They're voting in what they see is the mostly the people that appeal to them. You know, you vote for the people that you feel are going to have your best interests at heart.
So, Carol, I mean, is the black middle class malleable enough? Are they that conservative, I guess is the better question, based on his hypothesis? They're ripe for the picking.
No, I don't think they are. And I think what is happening is the black middle class is much more astute politically than it has been. And because of that, they are weighing issues. They are looking at what the candidate says that it's going to directly affect them and their families and their communities, and then they're coming to a decision. Now, this time it might be Democratic. Next time it might be Republicans. But I don't think they are as attached to labeling party labels as they are to what does this mean for me personally.
But aren't most of the African-American entrepreneurs Republicans?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, because it's a benefit.
Yes, because the one Republicans and Democrats, and I've always said this from day one, I don't think neither give a damn about what happens to black folks. I really truly don't. They give a damn about what happens to their pocket. Maybe I'm using the wrong language here, but they give a darn
That's okay.
about what happens to their pocketbooks and to their families and to their future generations. That's both of them. Because if you go to the country club, the Norfolk Yacht Club or the Riverview Club over there in Suffolk or any place, you're going to see white Democrats and white Republicans sitting up in there doing what they do every day. Business. Business. Now, the thing that we have here is our elected officials. We have to be much more examining and measuring their results. The African American community, your community, put the
Your community. Our community.
your community put.
Oh,
He told you he moved out of Park Place. He didn't tell you where he moved.
But anyhow, we were very, very significant. I'll say we were very significant. No, prominent in getting this young man elected as governor. If he hadn't gotten our votes, the white women came back, white Republicans went and voted for white Republicans, and they all went back to their camps. But African Americans, all 20% of the voting population, just demonstrated a strong support of McCullough. What do we get out of it? Yeah. What is somebody going to deliver for our community? Can they give Norfolk State the kind of per student money that they need to do the kind of education they want? Because I don't care, you could get another savior, take Jesus off the cross and put him as president of that place. If you don't have the resources to do it, the guy you got there now, I can't even think of his name now. Eddie Moore. He's not going to make a change unless they have money. He can't do it. We have to have people that have the resources. If you look at your per pupil funding at Norfolk State versus UVA and all the rest of these schools, it's outrageous.
Okay, but let me ask you a question then, Bill, because back to you all's premise that the African American middle class needs to give back and do so much. So where's the alumni from Norfolk State, from Howard,
yes.
from Bennett, my school? Where are they? And why aren't
they're
they giving back?
They're
Because
in
all these people have
they're
graduated.
in Harvard View. They're sitting up there not saying a thing. And I could even say the same thing about Hampton University. We invested $225 million. The state doesn't give a darn about curing cancer or anything. They give a doggone about their own constituencies. And since our people will not speak up, they'll sit back in their little cubby holes and yachts and boats and big cars and everything else. Won't give a dime to Norfolk State, give very, very little to their constituencies, and then they'll worry. Even Ben Chapes, who's the president of Ben Jealous, who's the president, used to be the president of NAACP, he's going to say his parents and grandparents had a interest in St. Paul's. It's a legacy.
But they closed it down.
Then I ask him, how much did you give? How much time did you put down there?
And
Nothing.
what was his response?
We're waiting on the federal government. There you go.
Well, I don't know about you all, but alumni at Lincoln University of Pennsylvania get back to their alma mater.
Here we go.
But that's what's got to happen. We got to invest in black people.
But I mean, seriously, would that not be one way that we could help to ensure? Because I know Howard is having some issues.
Howard is roiling right now. There's been all sorts of allegations about whether it's spending the money that it gets correctly, whether it has too many faculty and administrators for the number of students that it has. And, one of the things, integration brought a lot of great things, but one of the things it did to HBCUs, it meant that the market that it once was basically had a captive market. Right. It's not a captive market anymore. And you have so many years where the universities have been just putting along and not coming up with new strategies to say, okay, how are we going to be still effective? How are we going to deal with this landscape where, an African American student doesn't necessarily have to go to an HBCU now. So,
That's true.
And again, I think it comes back to that we've arrived mentality. And those of us who have gone to HBCUs also know that a lot of the campuses do not do a good job of cultivating a culture of giving. In fact, a lot of alumni will graduate and have an attitude. I'm not giving back because I don't like the way I had to stay on the long line for my financial aid, all these kinds of things.
But
they don't a lot of times do a good job
that comes
of
from
cultivating.
home. That doesn't come from the university.
No,
That comes from home.
He's not saying it comes from the university, though.
I'm just saying
that's an experience.
This is the experience that you will find among alumni
But
who
let me
will
get
say
Carol
this.
in this conversation
But
because
don't
she's
you
working
think part
at an
of the
HBCU.
giving of alumni is associated with their pocketbooks as well?
Yeah,
and
of
as
course.
you know, even black professionals aren't making as much as their counterparts. So when it comes to giving back, they might not have it to give back.
They can't give $100.
They might be able to give that, but I'm talking.
That might be more of an issue at NSU. It should be less of an issue at Howard because Howard has first of all, it's an older university, and you have the Tarleton 10th. Its function or its mission was different from NSU. So maybe NSU will have a harder struggle. That should not be the struggle at Howard. And Howard is having some of the same
some
issues.
people are very surprised that Howard would be having.
Right, but if
Would
your
be having
mindset
issues
is that we've arrived, and so if I've arrived, I'm spending my resources on tools and on toys that signify that I've arrived. But to Bill's point, if you have a culture of giving, instead of you spending that money on that BMW to symbolize that you've arrived, maybe what you will do is you will give it back to the university. Maybe you'll get a used BMW or a different type of vehicle that will enable you to give back to your university. So for me, whatever the amount is, no matter how small or large, I make sure that I'm giving back to my university. I even give back to the University of Arizona where I got my graduate degree.
Absolutely.
Because I have a mindset that, when I went there, it was because someone was giving back that enabled me to go there.
In the black middle class, too, philanthropy was a part of the culture. I mean, where did that go?
The culture today, I went to an event for Terry McAuliffe, and I have a little Saturn car, maybe what's a 2010, whatever. I was almost embarrassed. All the other black people, Cadillacs and BMWs and the new Mercedes that changes colors inside and this and that.
Oh, I didn't even know they had one.
And and I'm just looking here, and I give to my alma mater, Kansas University. I give money. I give money to Hampton University, and so it's a part of, because you have to. It's just like you have to give a church. You had to give something. You had to give something back. We have got into this mentality that we got to give everything. We got to spend everything we get. We're so bad. It's not only do we not give back to our universities and education, we don't give back to our own selves. We don't save enough money for our own retirement, for our own well-being. So it's a whole mentality that, again, I'm not trying to be personalizing with this. We got to go back to the old home ground or whatever we used to call it and figure out how we're going to get through this. Lastly, the last thing you'll see is where a lot of the younger kids are now becoming very, very disillusioned with President Obama because now they're paying taxes. My daughter is having the hardest time in the world understanding how she has to pay so much taxes in California. Not only the federal taxes, but the state taxes and all these taxes. And she's a graduate student. And she's not understanding to the system and the wealth that we had in terms of intellectual capabilities that Mr. Obama and all these other people have in his cabinet is not being generated out to our communities.
Okay, so in the last 3 minutes that we have, I want each of you just to take a moment, speak to the person in your mind, the middle class African American in your mind that you know, and tell them one thing they need to do so we can start to move this needle and change things. Will?
Develop a mindset to, if you're in a position to help someone, help them and require them that in return you help somebody else. Do not sit in your position of power like we have in this community. And Barbara, you and I have sat with these people who will look you in the eye and know that they're in a position that they can help you and do something for you, especially a younger person. Bring them along and don't do it.
Bill.
Mine is very simple. Ruffner Middle School, which is not accredited, up in Norfolk, right behind City Hall down there. We can't get 10 professional African-American men and women who have made it to go back and spend just spend a week. I will donate a week or 2 weeks. Put together a strategic plan, an academic program, and we'll base it with Hampton and Norfolk State and CNU, because I'm on the board there. We'll figure out how to save that school ourselves, among us. Putting together an academic plan.
They need to call you.
Just
get in
call
touch
me,
with you where.
and we'll sit down and put a strategic plan together, and we'll make it happen.
Okay, Carol?
I would say eliminate the philosophy, I've got mine, you got yours to get. You, they are you, we are them. Let's get together and help, whatever. And I agree, Bill. I think that's a wonderful plan.
Okay. And Roger?
I think mentoring is a big part of this, because especially for young black boys, they need to see black men who are doing well and who are achieving, not necessarily rich, but have their stuff together and are achieving. And secondly, giving to those institutions that we know that make a difference. You want your money to go to places not willy-nilly, but also the places that are doing things that have some measure of success, especially the places that, such as for me, to Howard, one of the things that I do.
I'm just real curious. We got about 30 seconds. Do any of your children go to an HBCU?
Oh, yeah, my oldest one. He went to Morgan.
Okay. Went to Morgan. Your kids?
None of my three, and none of them wanted to.
And they didn't want to. What about in your family, Carol?
Well, all of us did. Most of us went to Fisk. We have a lot that went to Virginia State, 1 or 2 that went to Bennett. So,
after my son went to UVA, my daughter was forced to go to an HBCU, Hampton University. It was by force. Tore up her application, tore up her acceptance.
And said, that's right, you got to go.
You got to go.
Thank you, Roundtable. We'll get together again next month, and we will be right back.
Hi, I'm Daphne Maxwell Reid, and if you'd like to have another insightful conversation about the African American community, join us on Another View, WHRV 89.5.
Daphne Reid, the wife of Tim Reid, and the Tim Reid Legacy Foundation Film Festival is going on this weekend at Norfolk State University and several other venues around town, so check that out. And let me tell you about 2 other quick events coming up. The first is the Financial Fitness Fair 2013, sponsored by Suffolk Redevelopment and Housing, the Bowman Law Firm, and Tabernacle Christian Center. It's Thursday, November the 14th from 6 until 9 at the Tabernacle Center, East Washington Street in Suffolk. To RSVP, call 925-64313. And don't miss the Family Reunion, Reconnecting Values, Visions, and Victory, sponsored by NSU's Women's Economic Development Center. It's a one-day conference on Saturday, November the 16th from 8:30 until 1 at the New Student Center on campus. It's all about improving our families. Call 823-2650 or visit our website, anotherviewradio.org, for more information. We hope today's show has given you food for thought, and if you'd like to hear it again or share it with a friend, please visit our website, anotherviewradio.org. There you will find podcasts of our shows, and you can also sign up for our eView newsletter, a once-a-week reminder of upcoming programs. And please like us on Facebook. Next week, A Foodie's Delight, Food Memories, how food plays a key role in how we remember our past, plus a new spin on some old Thanksgiving favorites, including pies. Yum. Our theme music was composed and performed by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer. Our audio engineer is Victor Bowen, and Eric Moore answered our phones. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. Have a fabulous weekend, everyone, and let's get together again next Friday at noon for Another View.